Chapter 5. The Fifth Star. Opening. A word no one wants to hear. Death sentences. That's all it took to silence a room. Dr. Jade stood before her 10th year class inside the base, voice steady, eyes thoughtful. If someone commits a crime so severe that it harms our entire people beyond repair, she explained, the military tribunal may pass the highest penalty. She let that sink in, then added, it's rare. The conditions are strict. In fact, it's been years, decades, since anyone received it. The military is urging its complete abolition. A hand rose. Then that building becomes useless, right? Jade hesitated. Not exactly. The hall has another purpose, mercy quarters. Because Celestarans don't truly die in the ordinary sense, some forget to value their present lives. Each year, a few come of their own will and request an end to their current existence. Students traded uneasy glances. Why would anyone choose that? Often, Jade said, gaze drifting toward the sealed chamber, because their other half has passed on. Widowers and widows believe that if they die close in time to their partners, they'll enter the cycle together and wake together. Elias listened, rapt. Does it work? Jade's answer was gentle but firm. No, after the soul enters the purification reservoir, memories dissolve. The face, the temperament, everything in the next life is random. Even the length of the sleep between lives varies. Two people who die together may wake centuries apart. In a sea of strangers, finding someone who remembers nothing, and falling in love again. It's a lovely wish, and almost certainly a myth. Lance whistled under his breath. Scientists, sworn enemies of romance. He nudged Bington. I still want to know who Dr. Jade's partner is. If they're both academics, imagine them trapped in a lab together all day. Tragic. Elias stuck out his tongue. Get a room, you two. Bington laughed despite himself. Do you really believe dying together means loving again in the next life? Lance's teasing fell away. He looked Bington in the eye. One lifetime is one lifetime. I love you. This face, this temper, this way of being. Whoever you'd be next time isn't you. If fate takes you first, I'll live on with the ache. But I won't gamble our love on a fog of maybes. They locked eyes, the world fading around them. Ugh, Elias groaned, swiping theatrically at the air. If you two get any mushier, I'm applying to mercy quarters myself. E. Lance swatted him on the shoulder, grinning. The spell broke. The class moved on. The Reincarnation Hall. Elias had imagined something holy when he heard the name Reincarnation Hall. Cathedral arches, incense, a hush of prayers. What he found was dazzlingly modern. Polished white corridors, quiet machines, glass interfaces blooming with soft light. Part hospital, part research hub, all immaculate. A man waited at the entrance. Graceful composure, sharp movements, gold-rimmed glasses catching the light. His eyes, one shade lighter than Jade's, held a permanent hint of a smile. Jade approached and, to the students' collective shock, exchanged a brief, tender kiss. This, she announced, is my spouse and the lead researcher here. You may call him Dr. Sterling. Dr. Sterling and his partner, Dr. Jade, stood side by side, almost the same height, her heels adding an inch or two. His eyes were a calm shade of gray, hers a light gold that caught the sunlight. One glance, their roles in the bonding were clear. Mouths hung open, especially Elias's and Lance's, who had just been gossiping about this very mystery. So much for their dull scientist theory. Dr. Sterling was all warmth and quiet charisma. Welcome, everyone, Sterling said warmly. It's an honor to have you here. I'll be your guide for today's tour. Please follow me. But the students, of course, were far more interested in gossip than in any laboratory tour. Within seconds, Sterling was surrounded by a curious crowd. "So you're Dr. Jade's bound one. How did you lose to her in the battle?" Dr. Sterling chuckled. "I've never fought her," he said with an amused smile. "Not once." "Is it true a bound one ranks below their partner at work?" "Wait, how can a bound one be head of a research institute?" Through it all, Dr. Sterling remained unshaken, smiling, patient, answering each question politely. Even when he didn't have an answer, he'd deflect with that same gentle calm. Noni. Dr. Jade, however, wasn't nearly as tolerant. "Hey," she cut in sharply, "this is supposed to be a physiology practicum. Maybe focus on something that actually relates to your studies, not gossiping." "But it is relevant," a girl protested. "We just want to learn more about bonding from a real-life example. How it affects health, society, and work status?" Sterling laughed softly. "Good question. People sometimes talk as if pair bonds create a strict social caste. It's not so simple. In combat-oriented fields, masters are more common because they're usually stronger in raw power. But in other domains, merit rules. In fact, plenty of researchers who are masters are working under my direction. I happen to be a bound one who directs this institute. The headmaster at your academy is also a bound one." A ripple of disbelief ran through the group. Memories flashed of their headmaster who has a teenage face nearly bringing down half a building to stop a rampage senior. One girl sighed in relief. "That's good to know. I thought being bound ones meant you'd lose your career freedom and rank lower to all the masters. I am curious who could overpower the headmaster and become his master," one of them whispered in awe. That," Jade said firmly, "is not something for you to worry about." Her tone snapped the group back to attention. Then one mischievous student leaned closer and asked, "So, Dr. Sterling, does Dr. Jade also make all the decisions at home?" The question drew a chorus of laughter. A hand crept up at the edge of the circle. Rowan, known as Truck Nyat, who often followed after Darian, asked softly, "If you offered your heart's blood willingly to form the bond, have you ever regretted it?" Sterling tilted his head thoughtfully. "Actually," he said with a small smile, "I chose this bond willingly. I knew what it meant." "Willingly?" someone echoed. "Why?" The young students could not imagine how one could easily give up his pride and accept being inferior to others for the rest of his life, especially in Celestara society, where there was a strict hierarchy between the master and the bound one. "Because I love her," he replied simply. "If being with her means taking this role, then I'd do it 1,000 times over." For a moment, the group fell silent. Even Jade's sharp expression softened. But isn't there a huge difference in status between partners?" another student asked hesitantly. "Don't you ever feel humiliated?" Sterling smiled again. "Not at all. Jade and I grew up together. We've been inseparable since we were kids. By the time we were 11, we already knew we belonged together. Our bond didn't change that. It only formalized what was already there. She respects me, and I respect her. Whatever hierarchy others talk about doesn't exist between us." A girl sighed dreamily. "That's honestly beautiful." Sterling nodded. "That's what a true partnership should be. It can be harsh, yes, depending on the people involved. But when both hearts are equal, the bond itself becomes equal." He glanced at Jade, eyes bright. "As it happens, I'm very pleased with my transformation, and someone's curves benefited handsomely besides." Jade shot him a look that tried to be severe and failed, the corners of her mouth betraying a smile. The students whooped and laughed. Even Jade couldn't hide the sparkle in her eyes. She finally chuckled quietly, exchanging a glance with Sterling. They both smiled, because this, exactly, was the reaction they'd expected. Hearing his words, Rowan's expression hardened, as if he had just made an important decision. His hands curled into tight fists as he looked at Darian. "Enough charm," Sterling said at last, theatrically clearing his throat. "Back to the tour, or your instructor will scold me later." Inside the White Cathedral of Science, he led them down a corridor, keyed a console and a sealed alcove irised open. Within a crystal cylinder floated a sleeping adolescent, body half transparent, like moonlight caught in water. "This," Sterling said quietly, "is an energy containment vessel. When a Celestaran body fails, the guiding tides bring the soul home. We cradle it in an energy lattice while it stabilizes, then cultivate it. Over time, a form coalesces. At first almost entirely translucent. Gradually, density returns. When the body is whole enough, like yours and mine, the soul awakens." "How long does that take?" Elias asked. "Varies, usually 10 to 20 years from first condensation to awakening." Gasps. "That may sound long to you," he continued, "but in Celestataran terms, it's brief. Adolescence typically spans about 10 years. Adult lifespans vary widely. Some reach 1 to 200 years, others 3 to 4 centuries or more. Our studies show a strong correlation. The more harmonious the pair bond, the longer both partners tend to live." "So pairing is biological?" Bington asked. "Biological and social," Sterling said. "We mature fully only through a close, bonded companionship. If, before puberty completes, a pair is forced apart, whether by choice or circumstance, then even if that person is legally an adult, their appearance and physical profile may remain adolescent. Development isn't infinite. Each person has an upper limit. Reach it, and the body stabilizes, what you might call your best state, until the end." "The end is predictable?" Lance asked. "We feel it coming," Sterling said. "Because our people don't fear death, we treat it as a milestone. Friends gather for a final reunion. Sometimes communities escort the dying here to await the day when the storm finally passes through them." "Everyone returns here?" Elias said softly. Sterling's smile dimmed. "Not everyone. There's one category of death that never comes home." He paused, meeting each of their eyes. "If a death is judged incompatible with how our society sustains life, if it violates the basic balance by which we endure, then the soul scatters. No vessel, no return." Silence pooled around them. "Who are they?" someone whispered. Sterling's answer was gentle, and it chilled the room. "They're you," he said softly. "Our children, the ones who end their lives before the maturity rite." The class stood very still, the humming of the life machines suddenly loud as thunder. End of chapter 5.